I am Rose Skeeters, host of From Borderline to Beautiful, a show about hope and recovery from BPD. Hello and welcome to another episode of From Borderline to Beautiful. I am your host, Rose Skeeters, and today I wanted to talk about something that I get a lot of questions about. It's called gaslighting. So we're going to do what I like to do best, which is define terms so that we can really get a handle on what we're talking about. But before we begin, it's Friday. It's July 31st. There's a lot going on in the world and a lot going on within us. So let's take a moment and let's breathe together and focus ourselves. We're just going to breathe in just this moment and take a physiological sigh at the top of that breath and breathe out just this breath. Let's do it again, breathing in just this moment. And at the top, just this breath. Let's do it one more time, breathing in with me just this moment. Just this breath. Okay, as you head into the weekend, I hope you set some recovery goals for yourself. The biggest one being, let's just get 1% better. Sometimes we can go hyperbolically into recovery and lose discipline and consistency because we haven't cultivated yet those muscles or the muscles of patience. So as you head into the weekend, just aim for 1% better. Let's say you're someone that struggles with eating, disordered eating. 1% better could be taking care of yourself by having enough water throughout the day or by adding some vegetables to your meals or by adding a snack to your day. If you're working on fitness and moving more to be able to get more grounded in reality, 1% better could be going for a walk. 1% better for your recovery work could be choosing one activity and doing that mindfully. So you got this. Put on your coach persona and coach yourself through the next phase of your weekend. Before you get there, though, let's talk about gaslighting. I have been getting a lot of questions lately about gaslighting, and I really wanted to bring it to our attention. People ask me, am I being gaslit? And why does it hit so hard with BPD? So what is gaslighting? Gaslighting is a pattern of behavior where one person repeatedly denies, minimizes, or rewrites another person's experience of reality, usually to avoid accountability or to maintain control. Classic signs of gaslighting are consistent denial of events that you witnessed and that other person witnessed. It also includes being told your memory or your feelings are crazy or wrong, and progressive self-doubt that leaves you questioning your own perception. This is going to hit harder with BPD for reasons that we have documented within clinical research. People with BPD show higher rates of emotional dysregulation, dissociation, and unstable self-image. If we looked at studies reporting on dissociative symptoms, we have 60 to 80% of people with BPD have or experience dissociative symptoms. These features are going to impair something that we call memory consolidation and reality testing under stress. Memory consolidation and reality testing under stress. So when my emotions rush in, I don't know what's what. I'm not sure what's real. I'm not sure what is my feelings. I'm not sure what's my secondary versus my primary emotion. And if you remember, Your primary emotion is the emotion you'd feel in the moment, whereas the secondary emotion would be all of those emotions rushing in. And when someone denies your experience, it's going to collide with an already fragile sense of self and a heightened rejection sensitivity, right? Based on Marsha Linehan's biosocial model of BPD, research on invalidation shows that when you have chronic external denial, it's going to amplify emotional intensity and identity disturbance. So that's going to result not just in confusion, but it's going to trigger intense shame, rage, or that emptiness that we tend to feel. So if you notice a repeated pattern of the other person rewriting shared events while refusing to engage with evidence, and you leave interactions more uncertain about your own mind, that is consistent with gaslighting. Isolated disagreements or memory differences are not, right? So we're looking for patterns here. Also, what's very important, especially if you struggle, I know I struggled so much with knowing whether or not something that someone was doing to me was helpful or abusive. And that's a really scary thing actually to say out loud right now, and to realize that I did that, and then also to navigate. I needed help. I needed to know really how to read someone's character, how to know what truth was. I needed an anchor. And you can go back if you're willing to listen to some of the Moral Compass episodes that I released earlier on the podcast. And those can be found on Spotify, right? The reason I say that is because you do need some way to know what the objective, observable reality is. I know for myself, I did. I tell the famous story, famous for people that listen to my podcast, forgive me, of Jay when we were dating, telling me that after I washed the dishes, I needed to rewash the dishes because he didn't think that they were washed well, right? And I remember being like, oh my gosh, how abusive is that? He thinks that I can't wash dishes? And I had episode and I vented to my friends and I considered breaking off the relationship. And what was real is that I didn't wash the dish thoroughly. And so he just wanted me to rewash the dish. He was doing something else because there was soap on it and he wanted to help me. And that moment really stands out in my mind. There are many of those, but that one really stands out in my mind because if I had taken that and put it in the framework of what I thought reality was, then I would have thought he was gaslighting me often because he was telling me that I didn't wash the dish, that what I believed was true wasn't true. And so the world got really confusing. I needed a way to really help myself see what objective, observable reality is. And I was able to do that through my moral compass work. You can do that with a coach or a guide, somebody that you trust. But it's very important that you see things as a pattern. One of the things that always helped with Jay is I was able to what we call mentalize him. And so recalling, like, what are these things about him that would make it wrong for me to believe that he was gaslighting me? And he would help me. He would be like, is that the kind of person I am? Am I the kind of person? Is this consistent with what you know about me? That I'm the kind of person that would try to distort your reality in that way. And that was super helpful for me. So if you're having a hard time even answering that question, I get it. Don't despair. Easier said than done. But there's hope because there are people that you can start to seek out and things that you can begin to do in order to find a way to find that objective, observable reality. And it might take some tries. I know that there have been times where I'm working with someone and I try to help them with that objective, observable reality, but we have a hard time because I'm going off of what their framework is. So we'll even bring other people in just to say, hey, what's your perspective here? And then really to formulate a narrative once we get to know one another. So it does take some exploration and some effort, but there is hope there. All right. The next question I get very often is, Is this gaslighting or is it my BPD or dissociation, which I touched a bit on already, but let's look at it distinctly. So gaslighting and dissociation, they are two different things. They're distinct, but they look very similar from the inside. So dissociation, which we said was common in BPD, can create a genuine gap or altered recall, so genuine memory gap. And you might not encode that event accurately because if you have high emotions or trauma responses, that might disrupt your memory system. So emotional reasoning can also color the memory so that the feeling becomes a fact. I'm going to say that again. Emotional reasoning can also color the memory so that the feeling becomes the fact. That's dangerous, right? In these cases, the other person may be accurate and you might be filling in the gaps with an emotional driven narrative. Gaslighting involves intent, or at least a consistent pattern of denial for the purpose of control or evasion. The person, does not simply disagree. They're systematically undermining your confidence in your own mind. So, what are some practical things that you can do to make the distinction between gaslighting and dissociation? Number one, always coach or guide somebody you can trust, right? That's going to be so helpful. Someone that you've developed a relationship with that knows you well enough, not just to spoon feed you whatever it is that they think the truth is, but to help you determine within what you've told them in the framework of your life, and even with input from loved ones, what that objective reality might be. If you don't have that, you can also check for pattern behavior. I always say, Jay taught me this saying, and he's so right. I love it. He says, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if someone is gaslighting you, that'll be a pattern, even not just with you, but in other areas of their life as well. Or is it just an isolated incident? Is it happening here and there? Ask yourself whether the other person shows curiosity about your experience, or do they only defend their version? And you can also note your internal state. Dissociation is often going to feel foggy, detached. You're going to lose time and space. Gaslighting more often produces this sort of self-doubt that spins and hypervigilance. You can use external data when possible, so texts, third-party accounts, written notes. Now, the tricky thing here is that both dissociation and gaslighting can co-occur, and a person with BPD can experience the dissociation and still be gaslit by someone else. The presence of BPD symptoms does not automatically mean the other person is right. That's huge. So it's going to take a lot of exploration, and I'm a big fan of having someone help you do it. Number 3, question most commonly asked: do people with BPD gaslight others, intentionally or not? Okay, loaded question, right? This is for loved ones. So it's very important for us to know that gaslighting specifically is not a diagnostic criterion of BPD. And it's not present in everyone with the diagnosis. However, there are certain BPD processes that can produce behaviors that function like gaslighting. Unintentional forms are far more common, right? Meaning there is this sort of nefarious intent when we think you're gaslighting me, right? And people with BPD, although in the diagnosis it's not specific, like people with BPD 100% definitely have this as part of the diagnosis, but because of the dysregulation, there's going to be some unintentional gaslighting that can happen. That's common, right? So during emotional dysregulation or dissociation, a person may sincerely believe a distorted version of events and insist on it. Jay told me to rewash the dish, and therefore he is abusive. Or emotional reasoning: I feel abandoned, therefore you must have abandoned me. And that can lead to confident but inaccurate statements about what occurred. Splitting can erase prior positive interactions from a person's awareness in those moments as well. Now, that's not to say that intentional gaslighting can't also occur because it can, particularly when we're so scared of being abandoned or when our shame is so high and we use denial or blame shifting to avoid the emotional cost of accountability. When we look at the research, interpersonal functioning in BPD shows elevated rates of conflict, misattunement, and coercive tactics. But these are not universal and vary widely with severity, treatment history, comorbidity, very important. And if you go back and listen to my episode on manipulation, I talk about how I used manipulation as a tool to avoid abandonment and, for several other reasons. And so it is something that you are in danger of doing if you have BPD. And I know that's hard to hear for many of us still going through the diagnosis and climbing or recovery and climbing the ladder. It's just important that we exist in truth here because, it's just part of it. And it doesn't mean that you're all bad. It just means that we have to continue to work on having a good grasp on objective, observable reality, the truth. The clinical distinction that matters here is, again, intent and pattern. Intent is so important. And as well as pattern, that's how you're going to see what are the fruits of this person. Unintentional distortion is actually a symptom, and we can help that. But repeated purposeful reality writing is a behavioral problem, and we're going to need to gain accountability. And that's going to be regardless of the diagnosis, right? Okay, is about self-gaslighting. Self-gaslighting is the internalization of invalidation after repeated external denial or after years of that harsh self-critic. People with BPD often dismiss their own feelings. We dismiss our memories, our needs, and we're doing that automatically. The common forms of this are telling yourself, I'm overreacting, it wasn't that bad, I must be remembering it wrong, I'm the problem. This is reinforced by the same mechanisms that make external gaslighting painful because that unstable self-image and that high shame that you experience, right? So if we look back at those studies on growing up in an invalidating environment, whether it was invalidating or perceived to be invalidating is irrelevant for loved ones out there, okay? It shows that chronic dismissal teaches the person to override their own experience. And over time, this becomes automatic and maintains emotional dysregulation and not being grounded in the self, that identity confusion. It's measurable in reduced emotional awareness skills and higher self-criticism when we're looking at the clinical scales. It's treatable by systematically reversing the invalidating pattern. Right. I know I talk about like my inner child needing to be sort of reparented in a more firm way. There's a difference between self-gaslighting and then being firm with yourself and saying, hey, Rose, don't do that. Right. That's not the right thing to do. Right. You can do it. You can do it differently. You can do it better. Or I would say, hey, Rose, don't act out your emotion. You can communicate your emotion. Right. That's different than saying you're the problem, you're awful, you're bad, right? We don't want to start to engage in those negative self-talks. We want to replace those with positive affirmations and telling ourselves things that are, again, true. So, what are some practical recovery angles that you can take here? So, how should you respond when someone is gaslighting you and you have BPD? Number one, right off the bat, stop arguing reality in the moment. High emotion is going to impair mentalizing for both people, meaning your ability mentalizing is the ability to reflect on an emotion while you're in an emotion and to hold someone else's mind in mind. So to share perspective even when emotions are high. And again, high emotion impairs that ability. And not just for you if you have BPD, for everyone involved. So you can just use a short factual statement. I remember it differently, and I just think we should take a break, or I'm not going to debate it right now, or let's shelf this for later. And exit the conversation if needed, recognizing that you're containing, you're putting the conversation away, closing it. You can take it back out of that container when the time is right. You're not being abandoned. It's just a container. Then later, If this is a relationship that's worth preserving, right, you're going to return with specific examples in a calmer state and request a change in how disagreements are handled. If the patterns become severe, or if the situation is severe, we want to document that and seek some support there. It's important that as you go through recovery, and if you have a loved one with BPD, that you prioritize reality testing over convincing the other person of your reality. It's also important to set boundaries without escalating. So keep your statements short, specific, and non-accusatory. For example, you can say something like, when these events are denied after they happen, it hurts and I just tend to shut down. I just need us to stick with what we both know occurred and agree to disagree. You can use your DBT skill of Dear Man. Describe the fact, express the impact, assert the need, reinforce the benefit. And really important to try to avoid long justifications, as they often escalate the situation. If the boundary is crossed, you can follow through with a pre-decided consequence, maybe leaving the room or ending the call or reducing contact. Consistency matters here more than intensity. So it's also very important to repair relationships when memory or perception differences keep causing conflict. We can agree in advance on a process, so each person can state their version without interruption, and then you can both practice reflecting the other person's perspective, which is basic mentalizing. And both of you practice, right? So if you have a loved one with BPD, you also want to be practicing understanding their perspective, because everyone needs love and acceptance and to be understood. You can use written notes, shared calendars for disputed events. If the other person has frequently impaired memory gaps, you can treat that as a known variable rather than a moral failure. Focus on repair, on impact and future prevention rather than proving who is right. Whenever we fight for righteousness, things go south fast and there's a crash out. You can do couples work that includes psychoeducation on dissociation and emotional reasoning, and that's going to reduce repeated conflict, right? So, what therapeutic or coaching approaches help with reality testing and emotional regulation? DBT, obviously, strongest core evidence, most research treatment, and which modules directly target the problems that we're talking about today? The mindfulness module. Why? Because it's going to improve awareness of your current emotions versus just the interpretation of them. Emotion regulation skills, they're going to reduce the intensity that distorts memory and perception. It's so important when you're regulating, you want to take space, right? Interpersonal effectiveness skills are going to teach clear boundary setting and repair. And then reality testing is practiced through check the facts and opposite action to emotion-driven conclusions. And what else do I love? MBT, right? Mentalization-based treatment specifically trains the capacity to hold both minds in mind under stress. This is going to reduce both the tendency to feel gaslit and the tendency to distort other people's intentions. Both treatments show significant reduction in interpersonal conflict and self-harm when we look at the research. Skills practice outside a session is required for lasting change, though, because insight alone is rarely enough. We do need to be working hard on using our mindfulness skills, using our distress tolerance skills, on learning perspective taking, on learning mentalization, which is a bit more involved than just perspective taking. So hopefully this helps you today on your journey to figure out, what is gaslighting? Is it happening to me? Am I doing it to others and to myself? And what can I do about it? You're always welcome to reach out and schedule a session with me or with Jay. You can do that right on our website at thriveonlinecounseling.com. You can send us an email at rose@thriveonlinecounseling.com or jay@skeeterstrength.com. You can find all this information in the show notes. I'll also be running a group coming up again here in the fall. I'll be releasing information about that soon. Super excited. Jay has written a workbook for emotional dysregulation. That's a PDF that you guys can download. We're going to talk about it. We're going to release that. And we really hope that it's going to be helpful to this community. So remember, You are loved, you are worthy, and you were created with a purpose. And I will see you next time for another episode of From Borderline to Beautiful. Have a great weekend. Are you feeling scared, lost, trapped, or alone? Depression, anxiety, developmental trauma, relationship conflicts, these can all press pause on our life goals. We here at Thrive would be honored to support and serve you in your time of need. To schedule your first session, give us a call at 844-9THRIVE. That's 844-984-7483. You can also send us a text. Or visit us on the web at www.thriveonlinecounseling.com. That's thriveonlinecounseling.com. We offer mindset coaching to individuals both nationally and internationally, and we would love to hear from you today.
Yeah. I can't change the past when it's tomorrow. Yeah. You can't change the past when it's tomorrow. Yeah. There was a time when the slate was clear. No sins or remorse piled up year by year. I was on a nice list. There wasn't a chance I'd miss. Maybe should have passed on chasing every wish. Now knowing this, yeah. I climbed ladders and reached for a star, thinking the right number of dollars could take me so far. I had no idea I come to know who you are, the depth of the pain, the breadth of the scar. And here's the thing I still can't dismiss. Maybe I choose it again, even now, knowing this. Yeah. I had my road cast, escaping the ghosts from back in the past, chasing success so fast while my soul sat on a shelf. No wonder I struggle with my mental health. I had the vision, I had the plan, not realizing it would change who I am. Roadblocks, battles, seasons of sorrow, I brushed them off, they couldn't last till tomorrow. I didn't process, I didn't grieve, I didn't sit and let things be. I just kept moving, no time or stress. Should I have stopped now? Now knowing this, yeah. Plug and play with all the things. After every mistake, I'd forget this thing, thinking nobody else could get me right. Every interaction triggered my fight or flight. In the chaos, I searched for peace, not realizing acceptance held the key. Starting with honesty, stillness, learning to sit things I ignored before knowing this. I think about the times and still get pissed. Wondering what I could have done now. Knowing this, the winds of change can knock you down, rip your reality straight from the ground. Would I follow the same road? Would I chase the bliss? Would I make the same choice now? Knowing this, the truth cuts deep, the lessons persist. Would I do it all again now? Knowing this. It's who you are when nobody's watching. The thoughts inside, I never forgot them. I'd rather you sit and pout, but if you had them, would you speak them out? Or let them fester with all your doubt? What would you do now? Knowing this, living for the day I can use my 401k. That is not the way, I don't wanna work this hard anymore. Waiting to find peace, then die when I'm 74. Living in the now should be the life, not just surviving in the wash filled with strife. Went to the physician, yeah, and he said I was ill. Then he gave me a dose of mind-numbing pills. He said, listen son, it's all the feelings that kill. Would I listen to that now? Knowing this, searching and searching for it. Whatever it is, every road I take, I never quite live in it. Not in a bottle, not in her pants, not in the temple or doing the tribal dance. Horoscopes, ganja, a tarot reading, none of them revealed the meaning. Dopamine makes me a love machine. I've got no executive function and that makes me mean. Addicted to the caffeine from the coffee bean. You might be concerned, but yo, I'm trying to function. So unpack all that, take it back to your luncheon. Yeah, your buzzwords and assumptions. Yeah, you get over it and it's nothings. Maybe wisdom's just collecting scars, learning who you are. was waiting in the empty space. Still I wonder when I reminisce. Now no